Sorry, yes, sir. I meant to, yes.
So I think it's important that, I think both Dennis and you also brought up issues. You asked questions, you didn't get answers. You were told you would get answers the next day about this, and you didn't. So that's not how we should be operating.
Sir, can you speak into the mic? They said they can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to move it a little bit closer. So I'm going to try to address some of those issues today, and I think we need to do that in each meeting so you don't have to wait, in fairness to you and everybody else who asked them. So there's a couple of things, and just bear with me because this is going to take a little bit of time, but this is pretty much ground this town to a halt with a lot of the misinformation that is out there. And we unfortunately have to redirect our efforts to that. So I'm going to read some things out of the charter to try to answer as many of those questions as I can. Section 4.6, powers and duties of the manager. The manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the town, shall supervise and be responsible for the administrative and financial affairs of the town, and shall carry out the policies enacted by the council. The manager shall be charged with the preservation of health, safety, and welfare of persons and property. And this is the next part that I want folks to pay attention to. And shall see to the enforcement of the ordinances of the town, this charter, and general state laws governing administration of the town. The manager shall supervise and direct the administration of the town departments and personnel therein. I emphasize that because when I came here, it was apparent that we were not following all the laws. When the legislature passed them, we shall carry them out. And I am charged with doing that. Nobody else in this charter is charged with doing that but me. And I'm going to do that as long as I am here. And I don't plan on going anywhere, just so we're all clear about that. I have no intention whatsoever of resigning because there's no good cause for me to do so. Now, when I say there are things that we're doing that don't follow, I'm not talking about public corruption where people are taking money. I have yet to see any of that. I've heard rumors about all that, but there is no evidence that I have seen in the 7 months I've been here to indicate that any previous town official or existing town official has done that. If I do get that, you can be assured I'm going to follow the policy that I wrote about how we're going to handle that and how we've been handling those, any types of complaints that come in. But in some cases, we aren't following the law for whatever reason, and some people have, those who were here before, have taken that personally. I don't think they quite frankly they should. It is the person who's in this job to make sure that we follow the law, and that's what the charter says. Councilors are volunteers. Some of them have been here for years. I don't blame them. That's not my job to do that. My job is to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing by the law, because that is what I am charged with. So the fire chief hiring process. I'm going to read a couple of sections out of the charter that pertain to that. This is 4.6, Section C. The manager shall fix the compensation of all town officers and employees appointed by the manager within the limits established by existing appropriations. When the voters vote on, when you say approve the contract, the voters do not approve contracts. They do not. They approve appropriations for the next year. These are 3-year contracts, and that is told to the voters, but they do not approve the language in the contract. They do not approve specific salary amounts for employees. That is not how it works. They approve X amount of dollars. There's a warrant article that says that. That's how that works. Section H, the manager shall set rules and regulations establishing a system of personnel administration known as the personnel plan. The personnel plan shall include provisions with regard to classification, compensation, selection, training, promotion, grievances, discipline, vacations, and it goes on. There's another section in 4.8. I'm going to read part of that. Non-interference with town administration. The council shall act in all matters as a body, except as expressly provided elsewhere in this charter. Neither the council nor even its members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to office or employment, or direct the removal, suspension, discipline, adjustment in pay, benefits, or working conditions of any employee by the manager or any of the town department heads. That's what your charter says, and that's been in effect since 1996 when it was passed by the people. The fire chief hiring process. We conducted a hiring process which is consistent across New England and across the country. We used an outside firm to do that. As Kathy indicated, I'm not an expert on firefighting. I don't know how to do that. We had 4 fire chiefs that were part of that hiring process. They spent a day doing an assessment center. Some of the folks in our own department applied for that position. They went through that as well. Very comprehensive, because they do know what they're doing when it comes to firefighting. I do not. I don't pretend to. That's why I brought them in here to do that. And then there was a whole other process where they were interviewed by the senior staff at the town, including me and other members that we went through, and we asked them a number of questions to go through that process. Background investigations. There were essays that they had to do. There was formal interviews, phone interviews that they did, as well as online searches to find out more about these people. A very thorough process. And I implemented that process as soon as I got here. So that was a question that came up. When did I do that? And I made that change before. That change in salary, it's $165,242, by the way. And you've got my cell phone number. You can call me 24/7, and you have. So you know that you can reach out to me if you have questions. So I think it's important to clear that up. Now, during that process, that requires a confirmation of the town council, which the town council did unanimously. They asked what the salary was, and I provided it to them that night. So they're aware of that. And that is how the process works. That is how it's supposed to go. Why are they paying $165? That's a fair question. When I looked at the qualifications of this fire chief who applied for the position, ultimately was hired, his qualifications deserve that level of pay. Our pay was not commensurate with the marketplace to be able to hire a qualified, trained person to do that. That's why I made that change. When I did that, there's a long history of doing that here, very long history. And it's been done as one-offs along the road, all along. For many, many years, that is what has occurred here. Because that's what the council needed to do in order to get trained, qualified people to fill these important jobs. As Kathy indicated, our firefighters deserve the best. They absolutely do. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think I've hired the best person for that job. Hopefully he still comes here in light of all of the controversy that we have here. So unfortunately, during that process, some of that information got leaked out, confidential information. When people apply with us, they do that in confidence, so they don't threaten their job where they are right now, because only one person's going to get that job. Unfortunately, that got leaked out. That's not right. It violates the law. It subjects this town to potential liability, because they could sue us if they lose the job where they are. Not fair. It has a chilling effect on anybody else who might apply for jobs in the future here if this is how we're going to act. Not the way to do business, not appropriate, and you deserve better than that. So that's unfortunately what happened there. And I already talked about the wage adjustments, and I already talked about the way the charter allows for that. When I gave these increases, there's been so much talk about those, I don't give out gifts. These aren't party favors. We've got to be competitive to fill the positions that we have. In the past, it was done as one-offs. I looked at those. We did market analysis of each of those positions, and we're still not where the market is. But it's better than it was before, because we cannot afford to lose the trained, qualified people that we have, and we need to be able to attract new people to fill this job. And I'm doing that, and I'm staying within the budget that we have, because I have an obligation, as I read earlier, to do that. I want to talk about the veterans credit a little bit and go through that process just to make sure, because right now there's a lot of misinformation out there, whether that's by mistake or on purpose, I don't know. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but we need to clear the air on this. House Bill 99 was passed allowing for this. I remember watching the videos before I even got here about the importance of it and the discussions that occurred in this council chamber by members of the public who asked for this. When I got here, I had a discussion with Steve Hamilton, our assessor, and we talked about this, and there's a process. The process is this. The council has to adopt the changes. We met in July. We had 2 meetings on that. I was not at the first one. I was here for the public hearing on the second one. The council approved that. The effective date of that change was August. That's the effective date of adopting the change, which is required by the law. They did that. They did what the public asked them to do. That doesn't take effect until 2026. We're already in the middle of that tax year. That's why that happened. That is what the law says. And again, I'm going to carry that out. So you have to ask yourself, what would possibly motivate anybody in my position to do this, to try to stop that from occurring? As was indicated, yes, I am a veteran as well. Thousands of people went over there. Some of them did not come back. Most of them did not come back the same way they left. Probably most, not all of them. Some of them have debilitating diseases, they have injuries, and they have mental health issues that don't allow them to function anymore, unfortunately. I was lucky. I don't have that. I'm not permanently disabled. But for those who do, If anybody thinks for a minute I don't have respect for them and I would not do anything for the people that I served with over there, people to my left and to my right, some of them did not come home, is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Moving on. The other false information is I gave myself a raise. Not true. And we had a public meeting on this where I talked about this, and I made sure that caveat was clear. There is money in the budget if the council chooses to do that. If I don't put money in the budget, they're not able to do that. I did not give myself a raise. When that information came out, and rightfully so, Mr. Belinsky and others asked the question, is this true? Good question to ask. Nothing wrong with that. The answer should have been, no, it's not true. Or, you know what, let me check and I will get back to you right away. That didn't happen. Not fair to you, not fair to anybody else. And now that lives out there and it has a life of its own. So I have not given myself a raise. These folks have not given me a raise because it's not even time to do that anyway. There is money in the budget. If they choose to give a raise, they may not do that. One of the cuts that I'm making, if we go to default budget, is my entire raise, so I don't get one. I'm not going to starve, folks, I can tell you right now. So I want to be clear about how that was handled. Old Home Day budget, Kathy, before you leave. Good. So I'll say it again, and it's been said a number of times. No cuts have been made to Old Home Day. I did not make any cuts in the budget that is in front of the council this very night, and neither have any of these folks either. The council has made no cuts. The budget committee has made no cuts to Old Home Day. It is fully funded, including fireworks, the police detail, the fire details. All of it is in the budget. What the council asked me to do is, what if we had to make $400,000 in cuts, where might those cuts be? Some of those, and a lot of that came, well, not a lot of it, but part of that came from Old Home Day. Let me finish what I'm saying. I have the floor right now. You had it before. It's my turn right now. So there's been a lot of discussion about how this nonprofit is illegal. Other communities have this. Allenstown, Pembroke, Old Home Day, they have a nonprofit that runs it. I just found out today from one of our budget committee members that actually Hudson has the same thing, and that's how they run it. We have a legal opinion on that was provided because of all this controversy. We had to spend, yes, more taxpayer dollars because the accusation was that we were doing something that was illegal. That legal opinion clearly indicates that we can do that, and it's an appropriate way to do business. So, the next thing I want to say is purchasing policy. There was an argument that the council acted illegally the other night when it made a change to lower that I had to get council approval for anything over $15,000 in any consultants. The council acted legally, and I said that, and I won't let you do things that are illegal. I will tell you if I think they are. You did what you're allowed to do. The reason why that is, we had Title VI, which is part of our municipal code. The policies were in Title VI. Policies should not be in code. On September 15th, the council removed all the policies and made them standalone policies. They are no longer in the municipal code. The way our charter reads, if you're going to make changes to the municipal code, it is done by ordinance, which requires a public hearing. When it comes to policy changes, because remember, that's now a policy, it is best practice, and most places do have a public hearing to get that input from the people we serve. But it is not a statutory requirement, and it's not a charter requirement. The council made a decision to make a decision for 2 weeks to give them time to make some permanent decisions. Nothing wrong with that. Perfectly legal. You acted appropriately. Because I've heard about that over the weekend. So the council's not acting rogue or doing things it shouldn't be doing. It was apparent when I came here that there are sides here. Not just two, there are many sides here. And politics is very personal, and people go after each other. It is not like this in every community, fortunately it's not like this in every community, but we have some of that. There's 27,000 plus people who live here. They deserve better than this. These personal feuds have taken priority over serving the people of this town. That is the prime directive. Somewhere in here, I guarantee you it says that. And if it doesn't, it should. That's what we're here for. We're not here for ourselves. We're supposed to be serving these people here. That's what I'm here to do. That's why you hired me to do that. And that's why they elected you to do that. We're not here for personal vendettas, and there's way too much of that in here. And it is holding up the ability of this town to move forward. That's incredibly unfortunate. I've heard this statement, Londonderry leads the way. Maybe it does. But I would also ask you to think about this. Is that the most important thing? Is it not more important that we are actually here to provide the best service to these people, not to say we're the best or the leader for everybody else? I think that's probably less important to the people we serve. They want us to do the best job we can and minimize the impact on their taxes. That is what we're supposed to be doing here. At least I think so, although that's not what it says. Leading the way is great. You got to ask yourself, are we leading the way right now? If we are, great. If we're not, then if that is the objective, then we need to work on that. But part of this going after each other is not going to get us there. It just isn't going to happen. The council and the manager have to work together. This whole system of government is designed for us to work together as a team. When we don't do that, we're not serving them. They pay a lot of money for us to do that. You don't get paid anything. They pay me $178,000 a year. That's, in case you didn't know, my contract is on the website. That's what they pay me to do that. So my job is to help you do that and to work with you. And I need you to work with me. And if we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to fail these people who we are here to serve. So I think it was important to try to clear up some of these things. I'm in hopes that it can change, but that's not up to me. That's up to everybody else to decide they're going to play their part and do what they need to do. But we can have this game of Monday Night Gotcha constantly, and I'm not sure that's going to get this town any place where it needs to be. You've been in 2 years of turmoil between managers, and the ball isn't getting moved forward. I would suggest it's time to move it forward, because I think they want us to do that. That's all I have. Thank you.